Atomic batteries to power, turbines to speed. Great Scott, listeners, this week on the show we go old school. So old it's the oldest movie we reviewed so far. Get ready for crazy fake technology, very detailed labeling, and a whole lot of onomatopoeia. It's Batman the movie from 1966.
Batman, it's really exciting. Soon, very soon, Batman and I will be batapulting right out of your TV sets and onto your theater screens.
That's right, Robin. Our first full-length motion picture feature in color opens a whole new world of thrills. The big screen gives us more space on land, sea, and in the air to challenge the most cataclysmic collection of super criminals ever. Their minimum objective must be the entire world.
This is the Superhero Pantheon. On this podcast, we take one superhero film a week and decide whether it should be in the Pantheon, the pile of shame, or somewhere in between. I'm Brian DeBrain, and you can find me on Twitter at Brian DeBrain. You can find additional episodes of this podcast through Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and all your favorite podcast apps through the real world. We strongly encourage you to leave a 4 or 5 star review as to help people discover the show and the great work that the folks are doing at the real world. If you would like to interact with us or send feedback, you can do so in one of two ways. First, email us at superheropantheon@gmail.com. Second, you can find us on Twitter at HeroPantheon. My co-host for this week, who's usually the main host every week, is Jerome Hewson. He can be found on Twitter at JeromeC1985. And can you tell the listeners why I'm hosting this week?
You are a huge mark for the 1966 Batman series. I think that everybody of a certain age watched this in syndication. It was probably on your local Fox affiliate if you are, say, 30 or over. That is how I distinctly remember the 66 series. And, of course, this is a movie that I've probably seen a bajillion times. My mom used to work at a video rental store, and I would very frequently take this movie out because it's Batman, and I had to see it as many times as possible. So, between this and the 1989 Batman, I've probably seen these two movies combined maybe into the high double digits.
Yes, I rented the movie as well because I do remember watching the show as a kid, like you said, locally on Fox or KCAL9, and then even discovering the fact that this movie existed blew my mind because I never thought that they ever made a movie. It just seemed like it was just a show and that was it. So when I found it at the video store of Blockbuster, I was blown away because, you know, at the time, like, I think I watched it around 96, 97, right after Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, so after that, you know, fiasco, so I watched this on VHS, and I quite enjoyed it as a kid. Growing up now, it's not nearly as good as the episodes from the show, and we'll get a little bit of the history of the show in a bit, but I'm definitely a big fan. I recommend going on eBay and finding, if you want to get the old show, you can find it for about $50, $60 cheap on eBay, on Blu-ray, high quality, all this, I think it's like 65 episodes, 3 seasons, Batman 66. It's a great pickup if you're a collector. I highly recommend it. They really improved the HD quality of the picture and the sound, so it really comes off nice and bright, and everything pops so much nicer than the VHSs and the bootlegs that went around in the 90s and stuff. So I highly recommend that. It's region free, so you can play it on your PlayStation 3 or 4 or whatever, so it fits and it plays all around the world. So that's kind of my plug for that, because I have it, I love it. Even though I haven't quite finished season 3 yet, I still enjoy the show a lot, and it's good to put in the background. The movie, on the other hand, is a little different. It's hard to sit through at times because they try to play the formula out through the show, and it doesn't really quite work. But let's kind of get into the history of the show really quick. It was produced in the early 1960s by 20th Century Fox. Originally, it was going to be for CBS, but ABC kind of went ahead and got the rights before CBS did, so that's why the show ended up on ABC. Season 1 was primarily written by Lorenzo Semple Jr. Now, he also wrote the movie. He's probably known for more of writing the episodes in Season 1, and you can tell because in Season 1, there's like this different tone than 2 and 3. It's less campy. Still tongue-in-cheek, still fun, but not nearly as campy as 2 and 3 where they kind of go off the rails, right? So a lot of people attribute the writing in the first season to him. So that's why they actually wanted him to write the script for the movie, because the ratings were such a success for the first season that they wanted to produce a movie. There was this in-between time between filming seasons 1 and 2. So they figured they'll just, up the budget a little bit, keep the sets, keep the same cast, and film a movie and try to make some money off of it. That's, this is what we got in between seasons 1 and 2, Batman the movie. They wanted the show to have a nice hip and like modern kind of feel to it. That's why it's got this like hip look for the 60s and the modern 60s look. They wanted it to feel like The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which was also a hit at the time. And so that's kind of why that they went with the style that they did, as opposed to like a darker and grittier thing that we're used to. It's just that they wanted to emulate the comics from the 60s, and the 60s comics obviously at the time were very bright and flashy and poppy and, pop art kind of style. So that's kind of why they went with that style.
Yeah, especially when watching the first season, that's when you really notice it the most. And I think the thing that surprises me in reading this now is I am stunned that no network has tried to do this now to get ratings, even if it's as a cheap ploy. It's just shocking that this is such an old trick that hasn't been tried, because you have networks that are desperate for money at this point, desperate for ratings, desperate for attention. You would think that this would be such an easy thing to do, because people are very spoiler-averse, and if you create something that's compelling on Wednesday night and you get the social media buzz behind you, you could probably get those ratings up for a Thursday night viewing of whatever the particular show is. So I guess the thing that most shocks me is that they haven't tried this again.
Yeah, me too. Like, I've noticed it back in the day with, like, movies of the week produced by networks and stuff, and they'll have, like, a two-parter, give that cliffhanger for, like, Sunday night going into Monday night. They've done it with, like, I know Stephen King movies that have been adapted on TV, they've done that. So it's been done with the miniseries, but not quite, series. I think In Treatment on HBO kind of had a similar kind of format where they went 5 days a week, 30-minute episodes, so it hasn't been done as much before, but I would like to see this format come back, because obviously I think it's successful. That's what made the ratings go up in season 1, because those cliffhangers at the end of Wednesday nights, it works, man. And then, right off the bat, Thursday, that episode comes, they escape, and then the plot keeps going, and then they get the bad guys. So I like that concept. But if you apply that concept in a movie, it doesn't quite work in 90 minutes, and that's kind of like the weakness of the movie, I feel. It does have its small tongue-in-cheek moments that you kind of laugh and kind of cringe about, which, that's kind of coming from the show as well. But it gets a little too much, and we'll kind of get into that when we get to the story in a bit. But in terms of the main villains, what they wanted for the movie, they picked the 4 that I think that are probably the main 4 from the show anyway. We got Joker, Riddler, Penguin, and Catwoman. And if you look at the descriptions and the villains of the week, quote unquote, for all 3 seasons, they're the main 4, no matter what. And probably Mr. Freeze is number 5. And Mr. Freeze is also an interesting character, because a lot of these characters get played by multiple actors over multiple seasons just because of contract issues and stuff. So we had like Otto Preminger play Mr. Freeze at one point. So there's been some interesting people. So the original villains from season 1 all kind of came back, except for Catwoman. Catwoman was played by Julie Newmar. In this version, just for the movie, she couldn't make the movie due to scheduling conflicts. It's Lee Merriweather who takes over, and she's just as good. When I was a kid, I could barely tell, to be honest, between Julie Newmar and Lee Merriweather. I didn't even know it was just Lee Merriweather just for the movie. So that kind of surprised me as well. And then looking back, it's like, yeah. And then Eartha Kitt comes in season 3. So it's kind of weird that like they go all over the place with going back and forth with recurring actors and actors coming back. But then we've seen that over time, like Roseanne, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. We've kind of seen that in the modern era. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the background. I mean, we did have other major villains that are quite popular from the series. There's Egghead, played by Vincent Price. We got Bookworm, played by Roddy McDowall, excuse me. And then we got Clock King, Ma Parker. Of course, I mentioned Mr. Freeze. A little side note that it's kind of like a tie-in with history a little bit. As you know, they did do an animated movie, Batman and Robin, with Adam West and Burt Ward coming back to bring back for the voices for the animated movie. And then they made a sequel, and the sequel had William Shatner, and William Shatner played Two-Face. Now, Two-Face was never on the show, but he was written for the show. They just never got to him, so that's why they used the plot line of like it was basically a lost episode that got never produced, and that was used for the animated movie later on that came out a couple years ago, right before Adam West passed away, unfortunately. So at least Adam West and Burt Ward got to go out on top, kind of thing, going back to what made them famous, and doing the voice roles for that. And we might take a look at those movies down the line at the end of our Summer of Batman, just to kind of take a look and see how they kind of revisited those roles, even at their old age when they did it. But maybe we'll get back to that at the end of the summer. But yeah, going on to season 3, that's when the ratings started to like take a nosedive. Like they started to take a nosedive in season 2, even after the movie came out. The movie was a modest success. It barely made any money. Like the budget at the time, surprising, $1.5 million, made a 1.8, making a couple $100,000 profit. But 1960s, that's actually pretty good. In season 3 is where they actually introduced Batgirl, Yvonne Craig. And if you kind of think about it, it predates Cousin Oliver coming on the Brady Bunch. And if you know the Cousin Oliver effect, which I think you do, Jerome, basically they introduced like a new family member to kind of reshoot or rejump the ratings, basically, and get the ratings going again. So that's why they introduced Batgirl in season 3. But it was just far too late because things were just getting out of control and the episodes were getting way too crazy and wacky to the point where the ratings just kind of took a nosedive. So that's kind of the history of the show. Also, it crossed over with Bruce Lee with the Green Hornet. Green Hornet was also a show at the time, a superhero, team-up kind of show. Bruce Lee was Kato, and they had a crossover team-up. So there's episodes out there of Batman, fighting Bruce Lee and also teaming up with Bruce Lee at the same time. So that's kind of like a cool little side note. But that's kind of the history of the show. It only lasted 3 years. But for the time, for that first year, it was huge in 66. Like, it was all over the place, pop culture-wise. That's why they made the movie. And I don't know about your overall feelings of the show towards the end, but I kind of see like why it went off a cliff. But you can't help but deny that it's influenced like all of Batman up to until now in terms of like the performance, the colors, the use of like weapons and stuff like that. I know it's a little cheesy, but how do you feel about it as its overall, kind of legacy?
I think it's really hard for me to watch the show on a consistent basis just because it is pretty cheesy and it can be hard to watch. Although, oddly enough, I did not have as hard of a time watching the movie, and I'll get to that in just a few minutes. But I think that the fact that Adam West and Burt Ward were playing these characters into the 70s, into the 80s, into the 90s, into the aughts, with I think there was a special movie of some sort, and there was of course the animated movies, one of which is okay and one of which is really bad, and I'm sure we can get into that at some point. But the fact that these guys were literally playing these characters until the end of their lives just speaks to the fact that their legacy is so strong, and the legacy of this show is so strong. And for superhero TV shows, I think they're just really hard to keep up. I think when you have a comic book, you can almost do anything that you want with the characters. It's easy to write and to animate, whereas with the TV show, you don't have an unlimited budget. So that makes things so much more difficult, as evidenced by the fact that there are a lot of superhero TV shows that have had very short runs. Even the Marvel Netflix series are 2 and 3 seasons at the most. Lois and Clark is a 4-season show. I think there are some successes. I look at a show like Smallville, which did run 10 seasons, but Smallville also was not reliant on super budgets, and I think that's why that show was successful. I think the DC universe, as it is currently constructed, is perhaps the most successful of television shows as far as live action, because Arrow is going to end it in its 8th season, and The Flash is entering its 6th season, Supergirl's entering its 5th season. So clearly they've been able to carve something out for themselves, but I think when you look at superhero shows in general, I think it's just very difficult to tell these stories because they can get very repetitive. And I think Marvel overall has had a very difficult time with this. I think even some of their ancillary shows, the non-Netflix shows like Cloak and Dagger and The Runaways, they've also struggled tremendously. And I think that's why they're going to be experimenting with mini-series involving some of their MCU characters. 6 episodes, I think that's just going to work out so much better. And I don't know. I think 3 seasons, when people think 3 seasons, they'll think between 50 and 60 episodes. But the fact of the matter is that with some of these two-parters, I believe they aired like 100, 120 episodes. And that's just really difficult to keep up week to week. Plus the fact that they made this movie in between the first and the second season. So it was just going to be very difficult to keep up this pace, to keep up that tone, and to try and tell new stories because they were kind of limited in what they could do.
That's exactly how I felt. Like, especially when I'm in the middle of season 2 watching it, I just feel like that the quality is just declining and that we're just trying to get the villains out and we're trying to get like these, cameo appearances and all these little jokes and stuff, and it kind of got further away from where it started. So that's kind of why I'm kind of like mixed emotions on the movie, because you can kind of tell like whatever they were trying to do, it was in this transition mode to where it was going, and where the show was going was not as good as the beginning. So that's kind of my mixed feelings on it. Let's get into the heroes. Right off the bat, we got Batman, Robin. Batman's played by Adam West, of course. Burt Ward. Alfred, played by Alan Napier. This is a little different Alfred. He's got the glasses again. He's way older, but he's a little, tactical. He's kind of like helping Batman out when he can. There's a scene in the movie where he's driving the Batmobile, and what's your favorite part of that scene?
He is wearing a little mask, and it's hilarious because nobody knows who Alfred is. And it's funny because he's wearing his glasses over the mask, and it just makes no sense.
Yes, makes no sense. And that's kind of what the jokes in the Batman movie are. It's just like jokes that kind of come out of nowhere and make no sense, but you're laughing because they're so bad and ridiculous. And we'll kind of get into that with the riddles from Riddler in a bit. But we also got Commissioner Gordon, played by Neil Hamilton, and Chief O'Hara, played by Stafford Rep. Basically, they all came from the show. It's like they're using the same sets. They're using the same Batcave, the same interior for Batman's house, the same interior for the mayor's office, the same things. And then, of course, you have if you lift the William Shakespeare statue in Batman's office, you press the button, the door opens, and you see the two openings, and then they slide down the pole, and then blah blah blah. And it's all the same stuff from the show. So they were smart in that they basically upped the budget, but only used extra money for like bigger, wider city shots and like more explosions and stuff like that. So it's just the same feeling as the show. There's nothing really special and unique about the heroes in this sense, because it's the same thing. They're just trying to figure out the mystery. They're trying to follow Batman's lead. The cops are kind of idiots. They don't want to admit it, but that's kind of how it is in Gotham City in this universe. So it's the same as the show. Goofy, tongue-in-cheek performances, but it's supposed to be that. You know what I mean? So, but you see kind of like Bruce Wayne, some of his weaknesses that they kind of show when he's kind of like falling for Catwoman's fake Russian alter ego. So I thought that was kind of interesting because Batman is pretty horny in this movie, and he really wants to hook up with Catwoman. Well, not really Catwoman, but the fake Russian alter ego. And then by the end of the movie, he's kind of heartbroken. So they kind of, brush over that, but he kind of like shrugs it off in such a Batman kind of way. But I wasn't quite impressed because I just felt like they were just, doing the same things from the show, and they didn't make it seem special. Like, I felt like if you're going to do a movie about the show, you got to make it seem special, but there wasn't anything too special about the performances coming from the heroes. I don't know about you.
I think Adam West is pretty great. I think it would be so easy for him to just come in and either tank it or not care or do whatever minimal amount of work is required for this to get done. But I think for me, Adam West is easily the best performer in this entire movie, and was easily the best performer across the television show, because he plays the smart. He plays a little bit of a smartass at times, but he also plays a romantic lead extremely well. I think that he is so believable as Bruce Wayne and as Batman, and he actually shows a lot of emotion. I mean, there's literally a point when he threatens to murder the villains, which I'm not sure if he actually does that. I think we'll save that for when we talk about Michael Keaton's Batman, who very clearly does murder people. But I think that, Bruce Wayne and Batman are always kind of played as a duality, and I think there's nobody that has played that better than Kevin Conroy, because literally the voices are just so different, and even the personalities are a bit different. But I think Adam West does a very good job of differentiating just a little bit between Bruce Wayne and Batman. And the scenes with Miss Kitka are really compelling because even in 2019, I am not sure that we have as much blatant sexuality as we have had in this movie. And going back and watching those scenes is really interesting. Not from a plot perspective, because it almost has nothing to do with the main plot, which is absurd and functionally does not work. But go back and watch those scenes and think about any superhero movies recently that have had scenes where the characters are so blatantly flirting with each other. And look, Miss Kitka does not hit the button for the other villains to come and rescue her at first. She is very clearly into it just as much as he is. And there's clearly consent going on, and there's also, I think there's some jealousy. Look, the allusions to Batman and Robin being gay have been there for a number of years. It was one of the things that the comic book was attacked for in the 50s because they were promoting a quote-unquote homosexual lifestyle, which is crap. But you could certainly read into some of Robin's reactions that maybe there's a something going on there. I don't know about you.
Just to kind of clear things up, the scene in which we're talking about, there's like some kind of camera. There's always a camera that they can watch from the Batmobile, right? So they're watching it from the Batmobile. Alfred's sitting there with that mask on over, with the glasses over it. And they're just kind of like feeling kind of like, are we supposed to be watching this? Should we be watching this? And then Alfred's like, Master Bruce did tell us to watch this, so maybe we should watch it. And then, of course, Robin's like, I don't know. It doesn't feel right. And then, Alfred kind of brings up the prudish kind of thing about Robin. So it's kind of a mixed bag. You can kind of interpret the way you want. It's kind of both, actually, if you think about it. He's kind of both jealous. I got the Randall and Dante kind of feeling with him, and he's kind of like Randall, so that's kind of a deep cut right there. So yeah, like I feel like Adam West is always excellent in every single episode. He's like the main anchor of the show, obviously, and he's so awesome when he's like playing people and like pretending to not be Batman and not know about anything about Batman while playing while being Bruce Wayne, while talking to the mayor, that kind of thing, kind of playing both sides, kind of manipulating things to kind of seem like he's not Batman. So I do love that about it, but it's just that I've seen that in every episode, so it was nothing special for me in the movie, and I thought they could have changed things up a bit. They kind of slightly did with the flirting and stuff, and him being vulnerable and being played at the end, and him not figuring out that she was Catwoman, but at the same time, it's like, how do you not figure out that he's, Batman, obviously, because it's the same face and the same voice that he uses. And that's the one thing, like, he uses the same voice as Bruce Wayne and Batman. That's one of the things that I kind of, like, criticize about his performance, but one of those minor things. So, overall, I'm going to give it a 6 for the heroes. Could have been a little better, but, Adam West is just so awesome. And everyone's kind of performing tongue-in-cheek, so you kind of have to accept it for what it is.
I think I'm going to shock you with my score, but I do want to talk about some of the ancillary characters. Robin is a dunderhead in the movie and on the show most of the time. There is even a point when he basically advocates for changing the genetics of some of the people involved in the Security Council, which that's a little Hitler-esque, but I'll just put that to the side. I think Alan Napier does a solid job as Alfred. I think very similar to Michael Goff in a way. I think their performances are very similar. They're just there as kind of support. They don't really get a lot to do, but I think they do what they can. It really took me seeing Gary Oldman as Commissioner Gordon to really think that he was anything special. I guess the animated show, to a certain extent, did a pretty good job with the Commissioner, but he's kind of useless on the show. Chief O'Hara is a walking Irish stereotype. I mean, the accent alone. I don't know if that's his real accent. I really hope it isn't, because, my goodness, is it just a stereotype? And there's quite a few stereotyped accents in this movie, but even though the ancillary characters are relatively useless, I think for Adam West alone, because he is really the anchor that carries this movie, to the point where even Bruce Wayne gets an action scene as he gets to escape on his own. It's not Batman that does the escaping, it's Bruce Wayne as he takes out the villains, and this is going to hurt the villain score, but for me, just based almost on Adam West alone, and on the strength of his performance and the way he carries this movie, I'm giving this an 8.
Wow. I'm shocked, but I see your point. I'm just so used to seeing him in every episode like this that, I don't know, it just didn't seem as, special. But hey, Adam West is awesome, and you can kind of interpret it the way you want. So let's go to the villains. As I mentioned before, it's a villain team-up movie. Hasn't really been done as much. I mean, we've had like maybe 2, maybe 3 villains at most. But here you have 4 big ones, like 4 of the biggest villains in the Batman canon, universe, whatever. Joker, played by Cesar Romero. He's great. Penguin, played by Burgess Meredith, also incredible. Riddler, played by Frank Gorshin, who's pretty good. And then Catwoman, played by Lee Merriweather, who only did the movie and not the other seasons, but she was also quite good. Like I said before, I couldn't even tell as a kid that there was two different actors between the movie and season one. Julie Newmar, she's great, but I'd say that they're about equal in terms of performance. Maybe Julie Newmar is a little more sexier at times in the show, but that's just me. In terms of the performances, same as the show, tongue in cheek. It just feels like Cesar Romero was like on a step below everyone else. And I think you picked up on that too, because I think he's great on the show. And like the earlier episodes of the show, he's just fantastic. Here, it feels like he's missing a step. I don't know if it's because he's not the focus, and he doesn't have a whole lot to do because he's got to share the screen time with Riddler and Penguin and Catwoman. But it feels like he's on a step below. Burgess Meredith isn't, he's great as usual. I love him. He's Rocky's trainer. He's the guy from that Twilight Zone episode that is the last man on Earth, and he breaks his glasses and he can't read anything anymore. That's a little side note there. I don't know if people actually know that, but that's Burgess Meredith as well. Frank Gorshin, of course, we talked about him before when we talked about Meteor Man and that nice little tie-in. He was the villain there too. He plays the Riddler just like the show. For me, I think the tongue-in-cheek performances kind of hurt a little bit, but like I said, I just feel like Cesar Romero was just missing something, because if he would have been on point, I think the villain performances, or the score for me, would have been higher. It's just that their plots and schemes are just too stupid and too confusing, and it's like they're doing all these things, and they have these goofy plans as opposed to just going out and just shooting Batman and Robin with a gun, like that simple explanation like in Austin Powers. It's just like they're doing all this elaborate shit. Like they're sending a shark filled with dynamite to get them, and that doesn't work out, and then you have a shark, just exploding, falling to the ground with dynamite full of it. I mean, God, that's just something that you'd never see today in any movie, where you stuff a shark full of dynamite for no reason at all. That's just animal cruelty. And then they also came up with this plan to launch Batman across the ocean from like a platform, and then having him land on a exploding octopus. Again, just really crazy and stupid, but that's kind of what the show was. Just thinking about an exploding octopus, exploding sharks, just ridiculous. And then at one point, Penguin tries to sneak into the Batcave pretending to be someone else when it's clearly the Penguin, and they play along with it, and then they still get him caught anyway. Just ridiculous stuff. I just feel like the villains, their logic and their motivations are not quite there. I felt like if they could have just come up with something smarter for the main goal of the villains, because the main goal of the villains is what they want, is they want to go to the World Security Council or whatever, turn them into dust, and then hold them for ransom for $1 billion each. I know that sounds ridiculous, but like I mentioned before, there's a lot of ridiculous, crazy technology that doesn't exist in the real world in this universe, and that's a big example of it. It's just you have to kind of like roll your eyes and kind of get over it, but that's kind of what the villains want. They want to turn the World Security Council into dust.
Clearly, this is a movie that does not know how geopolitics works, because the Security Council, they do not function as a government. They function as more of a negotiating body. It's the individual countries that run themselves. So good luck getting that $1 billion from each country. And I think that really hurts the movie overall, the fact that the main plot just literally makes no sense. And the dusting stuff is kind of amusing, because the implication is that the Commodore is a raging alcoholic, which maybe that's not funny, but I thought it was at least an interesting and more adult-themed thing that they did here. Catwoman's aspect of the plan is probably the one that works the most, because she very clearly understands that Batman and Bruce Wayne are totally into her. And there's even a point when Bruce Wayne gets sent right into her boobs when he is thrown into the bedroom, and there's a wide shot. It's very clearly a wide shot. They did not do a close-up of that one, but it is definitely something that they did, and kind of adds to the sexual aspects of the movie. I think Frank Gorshin and Burgess Meredith, I could watch these two play these characters all day long. You can see a lot of Jim Carrey's Riddler in Frank Gorshin. You can see it, and it's very clearly an homage. You don't see as much of Danny DeVito's Penguin in Burgess Meredith, but Burgess Meredith is great, and just some of the lines that he has to deliver, he's just so great at playing over-the-top characters. Mickey in Rocky is such an over-the-top character, and there are very few actors that I think could have done that role and been credible at it, but he certainly was, and I think he certainly is very credible here. Lee Merriweather is fine. Cesar Romero is generally okay, but it would be unclear to someone who's never watched Batman that the Joker is clearly the A villain. And what I think is most interesting is that the beginning of this movie very clearly refers to them as the Rogues Gallery, which I had never realized before. So that is very clearly a callback to the comic books. And I just think the villains can be very frustrating at times. Because of the performances, I am going to be a little bit generous here, and I'm going to give this a 5. But do not think of this as me giving respect to the plot mechanics, because they're not great.
I'm giving it a 5 as well, just for the performances. It just feels like there's just too many villains, and I think that's obvious. I mean, they haven't really done a Batman movie like this since, where they have like so many Rogues Gallery villains. Like this is what Spider-Man is trying to aim for, and they're trying to do a Sinister Six eventually, right? So I think that concept could kind of work if you do the work to build it up. They kind of did that in season 1. Like, they already built these like established histories with these villains and stuff, but the problem is like it's just too much. And then guys like the Joker need more lines and dialogue, and he doesn't get to do much because he's kind of sharing the screen time. So that's kind of the problem with the villains, and that's why I'm giving it a 5. Yeah, we mentioned the story. So the basic plot is they want to get the World Security Council, turn them into dust, and basically they're saying they're dehydrating them, which I couldn't stop laughing at throughout the whole movie, because what is the definition of dehydration? It does not mean you turn into dust. So I thought that was just clearly just over the top and ridiculous, not knowing what actual dehydration means.
I also love the fact that in this first superhero movie that's basically ever been made, we again have people being turned into dust.
Well, everything comes full circle, right? Also, a little side thing is that the villains bought a submarine, right? Where did they get the submarine from? They bought it from the Navy, who had surplus submarines just lying around. And Batman calls them, asks them what happened. They trace the purchase. They find out they sold it to the Penguin. And they ask Batman, "Are you disappointed in us?" or something like that. And he just hangs up the phone. He's like, "Well, you just sold the submarine to a bunch of villains, so good day." So that was a little like interesting like thing, saying like, "Hey, the government are idiots. They just sold this shit to the villains." So it just made the government look like idiots. So I thought that was pretty funny. Let's see. Yeah, so also in the movie, the plot devices that really don't work is that a couple of times in the movie, when they're trying to go and find the submarine with all the villains in it, they're shooting these missiles at them. And, you know, the missiles are not working, and then there's some kind of weird device that kind of throws the missiles off. And at one point, you find out that you think that Batman and Robin get blown up, and then they cut to the back of the Batboat. And then they mention on the Batboat that some porpoise went out of the way of the missile and sacrificed his own life for Batman and Robin. So I thought that was the most ridiculous thing. This movie's just filled with so many ridiculous things. I'm used to it from the show, but at some point it kind of got mind-numbing to the point where it's like, what the fuck, where the riddles are not even making sense, and they're giving all these bullshit answers to the riddles that make no sense, which we'll get to in the burning questions. That's going to be some of the burning questions, some riddles, wink wink. But yeah, I'm giving it a 4 because this plot is horrible. And I don't think this formula for the Batman show works at 90 minutes. It works perfectly fine at whatever, 45, two-parter, 45 minutes and a two-part, it works better.
I think there are two scenes when people think of this movie that they're going to automatically connect to. The first one is, of course, the scene with the shark and the bat repellent. That is something that has been referenced numerous times in other movies, including the Lego Batman movies. So that is something that, for better or for worse, has stuck in the minds of people, regardless of how fake that shark looked. And the other part is, of course, Batman running around with the giant bomb and basically being thwarted. This is something that I would expect to see out of Airplane or one of those movies, because it was so absurd. Because literally every time Batman would try to throw the bomb, he would either run into a group of nuns, a young woman with her child, a band that was playing the same song, ducks in the water. There was just no possible way that Batman was going to be able to get rid of this bomb, and the way that he finally gets it is pretty funny. I really do enjoy the Bruce and Kitka stuff, because again, it's something that you don't see in a lot of superhero movies, and there's a weird random anti-alcoholic message towards the end of the movie, immediately after Batman throws the bomb, and Robin asks why they're going to save him, and he says, basically, he says, despite the fact that they are drunks, that they still have the possibility of redemption. Now, one of the things that we have to talk about, Brian, is we have to talk about this bar that they are in. This bar where it's just people apparently drinking and fighting, and nobody comes to shut it down. And I don't understand the purpose of this bar. Apparently, pirates work there too.
You noticed the pirates as well. Yeah, I noticed that. I think what it is, it's just kind of like a go-to villain bar. Because I remember in one of the latest Batman animated movies, the one with Harley Quinn, there was a very similar scene, right? Where they go into a bar and it's a bunch of the old villains, and then there's like these random villainous characters from like the past. So I thought that was a nice little thing, because I think they're just all henchmen from the season 1, it feels like. And I don't know if that's exactly true, because I mean, you can't memorize all the henchmen from the show, but you're right. Like, that little bar scene was pretty interesting. Showed a lot about, the henchmen. I think it was more towards the henchmen, and because the people dressed as pirates, they seem more like the henchmen type, and henchmen are just all over the place in this show. So just a little side note, a total count of the animals that were blown up in this movie, but that were not actually shown blowing up: a shark, an octopus, and a porpoise, all blown up in this movie. So there you go.
Absolutely, and there's a couple of other things, again, alluding to some of the sexual tension that exists between Batman and Robin. Batman very clearly grabs Robin's hand when he pops up to show that he is still alive and was not blown up, so I feel like I had to mention that. The scene with the Security Council arguing in different languages is just absurd, and then they kind of switch, and because the transfer doesn't work exactly. And I just want to point out that the United States Security Council member basically sounds like a stereotypical New Yorker, and I found that absurd. The way you have to approach this movie is it's a comedy. If you don't approach it as a comedy, you are going to pull your head out of your hair, or you're going to pull your hair out of your head, because it functionally does not work. So that's the approach you have to go with, and for that reason, I am willing to give this a 6, but don't kid yourself. I think there are a lot of individual scenes that still work. I think there's a lot of funny set pieces. Even the final battle, the way it's staged, is pretty hilarious, but the main plot of this...
That kind of transitioned us to the technical side of things. I mean, obviously the costumes are great, the colors are great, the visual, visual action, descriptive words coming on the screen at the end. They got that in from the show. All that stuff carried over. That was great. The music's great. The costumes are great. The colors and everything. That scene you mentioned at the end where they're fighting on the submarine, right? And you see that like background fake wall where they filmed Jaws. And then it's also the same place where they filmed the TLC video Waterfalls. I thought that's like a nice little side note. But that's still there at Universal Studios. That wall is still there. And I think they still use it sometimes for ocean shots like that. But the funny thing about that scene, I don't know if you noticed, but like they only filmed it from one side. And it was just like one long shot that they would cut from different like parts. But they would never show the other side of the ship or like the front or the back. It was just like one side. So I thought that was kind of funny because you can kind of tell they were on a budget. And they were just kind of like winging it, and then everyone was just kind of like doing a fight thing. So in terms of that, it was kind of ridiculous again, but I mean, I love the music. The theme song is so iconic that they brought it in, from the show, and they just play it throughout, and the same soundtrack cues and everything. I love the soundtrack of the 60s show. So for me, I'm going to give the technical stuff 7, just because, I mean, it's so influential. The costume, the colors, the concept, the pop art, elements of this. That's the thing that people love about the Batman 60s show. It's the style and the visuals, I feel. That and Adam West. But I just feel like that stuff just sticks with you so much, and the theme is so iconic. So for me, that's the strength of this movie and the show.
I'm giving this a 6, and it's for a lot of the same reasons that you have said. I can't really... I don't feel comfortable even really giving it a 7, because while I think the costumes and the music still hold up as kind of being these iconic aspects. The lack of special effects, the lack of any technical wizardry whatsoever really makes me less inclined to give this such a high score. But I do want to talk about one of my favorite shots of the movie, and it keeps up with the theme of, again, me saying this is the horniest superhero movie ever made. There's a point when Batman says that this will be a most memorable night, and he gets onto his pole. The pole is literally screaming out steam and smoke, and it's not subtle at all, and I love that shot to death because of how unsubtle it is.
Yeah, this whole thing is very unsubtle, but hey, it's very, very fun to kind of watch and sit back, I gotta admit. But even with all this shit, the technical stuff, it kind of stands out the most for me. So, in terms of the legacy, like I mentioned, moderate success at the box office, did well on home video rentals. That's kind of where it made that extra couple $100,000 here and there. And like I said before, I watched it as a kid on VHS. You watched it, as a kid on VHS. I'm pretty sure this is one of those more popular 90s, 80s rentals that kind of got a cult following. And because of that, with the show on syndication, it got all kind of tied together. So the thing that kind of sticks out with me is they kind of introduced some of these newer kind of like vehicles, right? Because in the show, we only had the Batmobile. So in the movie, they introduced the Batcycle, the Batcopter, and the Batboat. And all that kind of stuff, it sounds ridiculous, but it kind of influenced kind of like, the modern era, because we got like a Batcopter, we almost pretty much got a Batboat and all that other things. So all those things kind of influenced the modern era, because even in the Nolan version, we have a Batcopter sort of. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, like I think most people remember the show and not the movie. And I think people will actually forget that there was a movie, because I think people just associate the show with, with Adam West and all that kind of thing. So my legacy is going to be a 6 just because of the moderate success that it had, but, it did have these influential elements to it that kind of were, carried over into the show itself, because they brought, like, the Batcopter and the Batboat into the show because they already, made it for the movie, so they still had it. But it kind of carried over into other things, into other mediums that kind of influenced even Christopher Nolan.
I have to tie the legacy of this movie with the legacy of the TV show, because I think people, again, they remember the Adam West performance so much. They remember these characters and some of the villains so much. And I think for a lot of people, this is their first exposure to Batman. Whereas I think the comic book and some of the other movies can get pretty dark, as we're going to get into in future weeks. I think this is kind of a family version of this. I think even the animated series is significantly darker than this. And I think where that they take the direction of this character, you can really see a more pleasant and friendly version of Batman, to the point where I think even the animated series Batman the Brave and the Bold took a lot of its cues from the show. Diedrich Bader is not Adam West, but he was very clearly going for an impression of that. So I cannot simply just say that the movie by itself has its legacy, because it's directly tied to the show. And my guess is that people, even if they don't realize that there is a movie or that this is a movie, they probably connect this in some way with the television show. So for that reason, I give this a 7.
So my final score is 28, and yours is?
A 32, which I am stunned that mine was actually higher by a few points.
It's that hero score. I think you just really love Adam West, but hey, I love Adam West too. It's just I'm kind of used to that Adam West. So total is 60. That's kind of where it belongs. It's somewhere in the middle. It's not a pile of shit movie at all. Like, it's not like the plot is bad, but all the other all the other elements of the movie, the style and all that stuff, it holds up still. So it's a fun, goofy comedy that you kind of have to like roll your eyes with, and you just kind of have to accept it. So there it is. 60 out of 100. Not so bad. Definitely worth checking out. And I would actually own it. Like, it's funny because I mentioned on last week's podcast that I thought I had it on Blu-ray. Turns out I didn't. I'm going to have to buy it now for I think it's only like $8 on Amazon. But I was really disappointed that I didn't have it on Blu-ray. I guess I was just so used to it on my Blu-ray for the show. But on to the burning questions, because as I mentioned before, there were some ridiculous riddles that we're going to get into soon. Before we get into that, burning question number 1. Jerome, who's your favorite Batman 66 villain?
I think if you go back and watch the Liberace episode, there was a lot going on there. Again, dealing with sexuality and stuff like that. That is not my answer, but Liberace, I feel like I have to mention that he was, I believe it was a 2-parter, but it's a really interesting episode to go back and watch. I think I've made it pretty clear that Frank Gorshin and Burgess Meredith are my two favorite performances of any in this movie, and Burgess Meredith overall as the Penguin is my favorite performance. There is a two-part episode where the Penguin runs for mayor that I think is probably one of the best that the series has ever done. For a lot of different reasons, it's hilarious, and Burgess Meredith is at the peak of his powers as the Penguin in that two-parter, so that's my answer.
Mine's a tie. Like, I really love Cesar Romero, and like, I think it was the first two episodes of the series where he breaks out of jail from, where the way he breaks out of jail in the middle of a baseball game that they're having in the jail. Cesar Romero, I think, is just a great underrated Joker. And you're right, that Burgess Meredith episode where he runs for mayor is so great. And then we're going to talk about it next week because that's kind of like the plot of Batman Returns. Wink, wink. Subtle, subtle nod. But yeah, that kind of ties in with next week. So, number 2. Would a Batman movie work today with this many major villains teaming up at once?
No, and in fact, one of my biggest complaints about a lot of superhero movies is that they over-rely on having a lot of major villains. I think in a lot of cases, with the Batman series, even having 2 villains has proven to be too much, especially with Batman Returns, Forever, and Batman and Robin. Less so with the Nolan trilogy, but even then I think they felt like they had to have multiple villains, whereas I think with a rogues gallery like this, there is almost no reason to have the villains. I think when you're doing a television show, I think it's a lot more acceptable to possibly do these kinds of team-ups, because at that point what you have is you have the ability to build up these characters and then you can have them team up, which is kind of what happened in this case. But if you are only going by a movie universe, it's not necessarily going to work out. I think one of the things that Batman did that the MCU ultimately corrected is so much about what the Batman movies were about was the villains. And the transition into better superhero movies came when Marvel decided to focus on building up the heroes as opposed to the villains. And while I think that has certainly led to some villains that aren't great, it has led to much more compelling heroes.
I totally agree, and I think Infinity War was lucky that they were able to pull it off, adding the 4 extra villains on top of Thanos. So it's very difficult to do, but if that had 3 hours and it had a lot of time to kind of build it up, even though you still wanted more development from like Ebony Maw and all that kind of thing. But I agree that like it's too much, and I wish that this movie would have just focused on Penguin and Riddler because it felt like more their movie with Catwoman as well. Actually, I would just get rid of Riddler and just do Penguin and Catwoman because it felt more their movie anyway, Penguin and Catwoman. So because they had a lot of interaction with Batman and Robin. Number 3, who was your favorite Catwoman from the 60s show? Julie Newmar, Eartha Kitt, or Lee Merriweather?
Eartha Kitt's the one that I remember, so I'm going to answer her. Her doing a romance with Batman would have been very interesting in 1968, I guess, is when she was playing the character. But Eartha Kitt and the way that she said the word perfect was very interesting, and I think she is kind of the most memorable, although I'm sure your answer is going to be Julie Newmar.
Yeah, just something about that sex appeal she has that just carries over. And I listen to the Ralph Garman and Kevin Smith podcast, and they're big fans of Batman as well, especially Ralph Garman. He's got this massive collection, and he's even joked that he's like in his 60s, and he would easily still hook up with Julie Newmar now in her 80s, just because she's like, I guess she still has that sexy voice to her, even at her old age. So that's kind of crazy to me. But she just kind of like has that it factor when it comes to Catwoman. I think Michelle Pfeiffer kind of gets into that a little bit as well. That it factor of being that role. Eartha Kitt definitely has the better voice, but in terms of the performances, I gotta go with Julie Newmar. So now we get to the interesting part, the riddles that the Riddler asked. You ready for this, Jerome?
Yes, I'm going to humor you on one of these questions. I will not humor you on the other one, though.
Okay. Number 4. What weighs 6 ounces, sits in a tree, and is very dangerous?
A person who has run out of burning questions.
Oh, you're wrong. It's a sparrow with a machine gun. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, sparrows with machine guns are very dangerous, and they're 6 ounces, and they sit in trees. Very similar to cats, but, unrelated, apparently, right? Yeah, that was number 4. You can tell, why these riddles and the way that Batman and Robin answered these riddles are pretty stupid, given that answer that I just gave was their answer, when it clearly was a cat. So, there you go. Number 5, what has yellow skin and rights?
So the actual answer, of course, is a pencil.
Right, but we know the real answer is a ballpoint banana. So, wrong again, Jerome. It's a ballpoint banana that doesn't exist in the real world.
So I am very clearly not as smart as Burt Ward.
Yeah, because Burt Ward was actually holding a pencil when he said that. Can you believe it? Who would have thunk it?
I cannot believe it, in fact.
That's kind of it. We've kind of gone over this history of the Batman 66 all the way to 1968, where it got canceled in season 3. You know, it's kind of like a short history, but it's very influential. Like, so influential, we're talking about it, like, over 50 years later, you know, because it's, you know, the colors and the style and the visual. And Adam West is just such an iconic Bruce Wayne. People still love him to this day. We love him. Definitely a top 3 Bruce Wayne for me. And for a 60s version, it's very much in that James Bond kind of feel to it, so I still like that a lot. So, a lot of positive things from the show. Positive things from the movie, despite how I feel about how it kind of overstays its welcome. But overall, it's a fun ride.
I think it's a very fun ride, and it is such a historical note because superhero movies have changed so much in the last 53 years. And when you watch Batman 1966 versus Avengers Endgame, it's like you're not even watching the same form of media at a certain point, and it's really a lot of fun. And very clearly, there were some language lovers based on the amount of onomatopoeia and alliteration throughout.
That's for sure. So that's it for this week. Next week, we're going to go back a little bit. Well, actually, we are already in the 60s, but we're going to go, I guess, forward to back to where we were from the original first episode of this podcast, where we reviewed Batman 1989. Next week, we're reviewing Batman Returns, and after that, we're going to just kind of continue on till we get to 95 and get through the Schumacher years. But next week, we go back to Tim Burton, Batman Returns, Michael Keaton's back, we got Michelle Pfeiffer, Christopher Walken, Danny DeVito. It's a good time, it's a dark time, but I don't know about that plot.
Some days, Brian, you just can't get rid of a bomb.